Thank you. Prior to talking about the reconciliation bill that passed last time we were here, I want to spend just a second to talk about possible shortages in the food chain that have been brought to my attention. I'm not sure the administration is doing enough to deal with the problem. As with so many other things in today's world economy, critical ingredients, including glucosinate and glycosaminate, are produced abroad in China and Europe. These chemicals, including other things such as potash, fertilizer, are sitting in ships and not available for the United States. Our farmers only have one time a year to plant their crops. It's not like a factory where something's not available. You can just start up the factory again in 3 months. And we have real problems out there that I think has some farmers very concerned and some feed co-ops very concerned. I have not heard about this a lot, though whenever I tour my manufacturers, I hear the same thing. It's not unusual that some of these chemicals, which are very important in today's agriculture, have gone up 5 times over what they were this time last year. Well, you can see what that's going to do to the cost of food, even if we get stuff. But I strongly encourage the Biden administration to educate themselves on shortages which are hurting agriculture right now, to do something at the docks, to see if he could bring Congress in to maybe change the laws or do something about the draconian new laws that they've passed in California, making it more difficult to get these chemicals on trucks. But I do this just to warn people, in case anybody is listening from the Biden administration, and we'll send them letters as well. If you want to avoid possible food shortages or dramatic increases in food, you've got to act now, because farmers who are producing the corn, producing the soybeans, are getting worried, and as far as I can see, rightfully so. The next issue that I'm going to bring up is concerning vitamin D. I haven't talked about vitamin D from this platform for quite a while. I know some people are worried that if you talk about it, it might discourage people from getting a vaccine. But I know somebody else who passed away in the last few weeks, and I don't believe was taking the amount of vitamin D that is recommended. Vitamin D is very important for a variety of things: bone health, preventing a variety of diseases, but the evidence suggests it can be very important in reducing both the severity and the amount of COVID. The number of Americans who are vitamin D deficient is very high. I don't normally like to talk about, racial things, but I want to read some statistics that some people back home can take. Right now, there's disagreements as to the appropriate amount of vitamin D a person should have in their system, the number of nanograms per milliliter. Some people feel it's 20, some people feel it's 30. But let's assume, for the sake of an argument, that it should be 30. Right now, 65% of the white population of this country would be considered vitamin D deficient. 87% of the Hispanic population would be considered vitamin D deficient, and 96% of the black population would be considered vitamin D deficient. It is my opinion and the opinion of the experts that one reason certain groups have more people dying of this horrible disease is because of the much elevated vitamin D deficiency. The way to handle it is simple. You should be taking vitamin D on a daily basis. We are told that Anthony Fauci takes 6,000 units a day. I don't know if that's true or not. I wish he'd talk about it a lot more if he does. But you have to remember, if you begin to take vitamin D, it doesn't get in your system right away. If you begin to take vitamin D today, it may get in your system 4 weeks from now. It may not get in your system till 30 weeks from now. There is a more expensive form of vitamin D called caliphydiol, which works in hours, not weeks or months. Unfortunately, that formula, which is readily available, I'm told, in Australia, is quite expensive. I would encourage people who are interested in it to familiarize themselves how to get a hold of it and educate their own doctors as to how to get a hold of it. Because if you do get COVID, a lot of times doctors now are prescribing vitamin D for people, but despite prescribing it for people, if they give them like 5,000 units a day, you're not going to have that kick in for a month. So you should familiarize yourself how you can get this fast-acting vitamin D, which will help people quite a bit quicker. There are a couple other things I'll point out to the public health establishment that I think the experts in vitamin D can understand. First of all, if you come in for an annual checkup, particularly an older person, you ought to be tested for vitamin D to find out whether you're deficient or not. It's not that expensive. It's something that should be done automatically. And if you are diagnosed with COVID, again, you should right away be tested for vitamin D deficiency, because if you are deficient, things can be done. People suggest taking as many as 50,000 units in a week if it's determined that you're vitamin D deficient. But in any event, I would strongly encourage the CDC and NIH to do more research regarding vitamin D. Again, I would strongly encourage them to make a vitamin D test, both of an annual checkup and something that all hospitals should be doing if people come in and they find out they're COVID positive. And I'll also point out, we do not know yet whether this Omicron variant, there are indications that it's going to be a little bit more difficult to be taken care of with a vaccine. And it's another reason why people ought to be paying more attention to the vitamin D. It's my personal opinion. Nobody knows exactly the amount of lives that can be saved, but depending upon who the experts you're talking to, they guess maybe on a low side, maybe 25%, on the high side, over 50%. And the fact that this relatively cheap vitamin has been out there for 2 years and has been left relatively untouched by the public health establishment is, I think, a scandal. But I would strongly encourage anybody who's listening today to familiarize yourself with vitamin D, talk it over with your doctor, and get a vitamin D test. Now, the reason I originally asked to speak today was with regard to the reconciliation bill. I think it's something that Americans should be paying attention to, not because of the cost, though the cost is horrific and it's going to result in still more inflation and still more destruction of the value of the dollar. I think there are 3 areas that would permanently change America. I hope it's something that the public can bring up prior to the Senate taking up the bill. The number one issue is immigration. We're at a time where, depending on the month, over 100,000 people can come across our southern border. The bill responds by changing the law and making up to 7 million people who are currently in this country illegally, setting them on a path to citizenship. It is changing things so it'll be more difficult to deport felons, even felons who've committed felonies. I mean, my goodness, if you're not going to deport a felon who's committed a felony, who are you going to deport? And you're taking away the flexibility as to whether you can deport them or not. In this bill, we are giving free Pell Grants, which are the grants we give to people to go to college. We are giving these away to illegal immigrants. I think this is such a bizarre decision because it's not difficult to find Americans who are $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 in debt because they're regular middle-class, hardworking families, but we're giving the people who come here illegally free college. I just think that is such a bizarre decision, but it goes to the apparent attempt of the Biden administration and the majority party to do all they can to get as many people here as possible. I will point out in this bill there is no money for new Border Patrol agents, which is another green light to have more people come here. Right now, the drug control gangs will use this information, perhaps on ads on Central American television, to tell people now is the time to give the drug gangs $3,000, $5,000, $8,000 and come to the United States. A couple other comments on what's going down at the border. Last time I was down there, I saw on the path leading to this country throwing away identifications that, like driver's licenses being thrown away. You have to ask yourself, if people are coming to this country and throwing away their identification from Honduras, from Venezuela, from Brazil, wherever, why are they doing that? Why do you not want people to know what the name you operated under in your prior country is? I can only think because you're running away from something in the past. This is common among the people who are coming here now. The two other things I'm going to point out for America is they weigh in with Congress on this significant bill. We are having the government take care of all the 3- and 4-year-olds. As I've said before, insofar as we have flaws in our education system, it is more in the middle school area, not the preschool area. Traditionally in this country, we're supposed to be a country of strong families in which parents raise their children. It is a fundamental change, I think, in the role of government for Congress to pass a law saying from here on out, it's up for the government to take care of the 3- and 4-year-olds. The other thing I want America to look out for is 85,000 IRS agents. That is such a massive amount. I used to do taxes. I'm somewhat familiar with audits. It is not going to be pleasant for Americans. And at a time when every business I can think of, manufacturing, tourism, agriculture, medical field, everybody's short of people to work. And how are we responding? Let's take 85,000 people and have them work for the IRS. Manufacturing needs those people. Hospitals need those people. Why in the world 85,000 IRS agents? And of course, the amount of jobs that'll be necessary is multiplied because if you have more IRS agents poking around the businesses, you have to hire more accountants to deal with the IRS agents. So a very strange decision, but to me, it shows that this administration wants to be the surveillance administration. And that's another fundamental change in the way I think our forefathers imagined this country, or the way this country should be. Thank you very much, and I'll yield the remainder of my time.
The gentleman yields back. Pursuant to Section 11.